Well, thanks for coming in today instead of Friday, but it may be the Thanksgiving holiday tomorrow, but there is no rest for many Purdue teams. Let's get started with men's hoops as they are in San Diego for tomorrow's 3 p.m. showdown with North Carolina State, a rematch from last year's national semifinal. Do you expect Purdue to win the holiday tournament?
Well, you know, they've done it for 3 years in a row, and it's been very, very impressive, Purdue, around Thanksgiving. Of course, we all remember this magical moment for Purdue, and that's, of course, in the national semifinal in Phoenix last year in Glendale, Arizona. A guy named Zach Edey took Purdue to a big win over North Carolina State. The thing about North Carolina State this year, they're 5-0. They do have 3 or 4 guys that are back that have played a fair amount, but not DJ Burns, the guy that made such a big impact in the NCAA tournament last year. Purdue also looks the same, except for that number 15, and also, of course, Lance Jones there. But Fletcher Loyer is doing that a lot for Purdue these days. It should be a lot of fun on Thanksgiving afternoon when Purdue takes on North Carolina State.
Fantastic. The team definitely needs that. Well, Purdue is off to a 5-1 start. What is the best thing about the team and the area that needs the most work? What do you think?
Well, Purdue is still a work in progress. I mean, there's no question about that. And in fact, that Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, Purdue's ability to have enough different weapons. The big three, certainly Smith, Loyer, and Kaufman-Renn, are huge. Braden Smith is playing at an All-American level, not shooting the ball great just yet. But the Boilermakers have a lot of balance. That's the good thing. The challenge has been for Purdue has been really 2 things. Occasionally turnovers, but also rebounding. The Boilermakers have to be able to be better on the boards inside. That has been a bugaboo of Purdue, which has not been a bugaboo of the Boilermakers the last few years with Zach Edey. So rebounding, keeping the ball in good possession, in other words, not turning the ball over, is going to be key. But you can see the highlights there against Alabama. The Boilermakers have struggled from time to time getting offensive and defensive rebounds.
There's always something to work on.
There is.
So, right? So you like Purdue's chances in San Diego?
I do. I think that it's a game where I think Purdue can beat North Carolina State. It won't be easy. Game 2, which will be Friday, will be against Ole Miss or BYU. And Purdue fans know that Cannon Ketching's a guy that Purdue recruited, playing for BYU now. That will be interesting. Mississippi's Ole Miss ranked number 23. So there'll be challenges both ways, but I think the Boilermakers get out of there with a win.
Lots of good basketball. Well, speaking of liking Purdue's chances, the Boilermakers head to Bloomington for the first night game in the old Oaken Bucket history. The Boilers were more competitive last week at Michigan State, but do they have a chance on Saturday?
I don't like Purdue's chances in this one. I think Indiana's got too much to play for. The Hoosiers are on the cusp of the college football playoff. The words that we would never associate with one another a year ago. Indiana has been terrific all year. Yes, they got beat soundly last week against Ohio State, but Indiana's got balance. Certainly a good quarterback in Rourke, but also 2 really good running backs, a defense that's been stout all year. Purdue's a 25.5-point underdog for a reason. Indiana has a lot to play for. It is a huge challenge for Purdue come Saturday night, the first night game in Old Oaken Bucket game history.
That definitely was a tough loss for IU last week.
No question.
I watched it, and it was a rough one. Okay, so what is your prediction?
I think Purdue is going to play competitively in this one for a while, but I think Indiana will be way too much for the Boilermakers. Indiana wins 31-14. That's actually a little bit less than the spread. It is going to be frigid. Purdue in Memorial Stadium. Temperature, wind chills, as David had talked about, in the 20s, I think. So going to have to get a lot of motivation to play.
That's right. Well, okay, the real question hanging around Purdue football is, what will Coach Ryan Walter's status be for next year?
Well, I think no matter what happens, we'll know on Sunday. Purdue's got to move quickly on whatever it chooses to do, whether they choose to retain him or whether they choose to move on. Right now, most of the tea leaves are saying they're going to retain him for another year, but it really will have to come to, I would think, to the fore on Sunday as the National Signing Day and the transfer portal open up in early December.
Okay, I guess we will see. Thank you so much for joining us.